And it is such a pleasure to be able to spend some time this morning with, I've been calling him football royalty, and I think that holds. Bama All-American, the great Marty Lyons. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Good morning, Steve. How are you doing?
I'm doing well now that you're here. You've made our morning. We've had you on the phone a couple of times, and we, like so many people around here, are huge fans of yours to this day, my friend.
Well, it's always a pleasure to come back here to
it's
the
family,
university.
Right?
It really is, you know. The family has grown over the years. When I got here in 1975, this campus was not what it is today, but I've been very fortunate. My daughter graduated from here a couple of years ago. My son, Luke, will graduate, next year. I graduated last December, so
I know you did.
It's been great, and it is always like family. And when you come down here and to be remembered, playing for Coach Bryant, it's just it's a pleasure to come back.
And more than just remembered. In fact, let's get right to it. You are here. You're going to be honored at halftime at the game tomorrow. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm very fortunate to receive the Paul W. Bryant Award. And, anything that's named after Coach Bryant, you really treasure, because here's a person that was so influential, not just in my life, but in all the lives of all of his players. He really was a visionary. He taught us what it took to win on the football field, but he knew the game was going to end for us. It was going to end for us, whether it was after the college or NFL. Sooner or later, you had to go back into real life, but he didn't want you to ever leave real life. He wanted you to understand that everything that you learned on the football field, you could be productive in your community, in your church, in your work, everything that he did. So I owe so much, to Coach Bryant.
He would be so happy to know that you honored a commitment to him to finish college. We've talked about that with you on the phone, and now that you're here to receive this Paul Bryant honor, I just want to revisit that again because it's just so impressive. Tell us about what he said to you back in 79, something like that caused you to just come back recently and get your degree.
It was 1979, and I had just got done playing in the All-Star games. I went out and played in the Shrine game. I came back, and of course we just beat Penn State for the national championship. So you win that game, you go out to San Francisco, you play in the East-West Shrine game. We won that, and then we came down, we played in the Senior Bowl. And really, by the time I got back to campus, I was so far behind in all my classes, and also getting ready for the NFL. There was no combine.
It had to be overwhelming, Marty.
It was overwhelming, but it was exciting. Yeah. We were getting calls to go to do a physical for Tampa Bay, for Cleveland, for Buffalo.
Oh, wow.
So by the time you start juggling everything around.
And you're how old at the time?
I was 22.
To be 22 and have all that in your face, I mean, that's just, again, great times, but still.
But Steve, all you're doing is giving me another excuse. And I tried to give that to Coach Bryant.
Good point.
And I went in there and I said, Coach,
I'll play the part of you, you play the part of Coach Bryant. So what happened?
And I said, Coach, unfortunately, I've fallen behind in my classes. I'm getting ready for the NFL. I'm doing all these things. I said, I'm going to drop out of school.
Oh, God.
And he was not happy. And he looked at me, he says, you'll be very fortunate. You'll play a game you love, and you'll be able to build financial security for you and your family. And he says, but promise me you'll come back and get an education, come back and get a degree. And he stuck his hand out.
As in, when we're going to shake on this, we've got an agreement.
And I shook his hand. And then, Coach Bryant passed away in 1983, and there was only one person that could hold themselves accountable for this promise, this commitment, and it was me.
And you didn't have to do this.
Yeah.
Well,
but you did, didn't you? You did have to.
I think you do. I think that's the one thing that if we're trying to teach our kids and we're trying to teach society how to be accountable,
right,
then make sure that you take the words of a promise and make them become a reality. You don't always need to sign a contract to be held accountable. And I did try to come back, between the time that I did graduate and the time I made the promise, but it just didn't work out. It didn't work out.
This speaks volumes about your character.
Right, totally.
That you did this, and after Coach Bryant passed away, that you wanted to honor that commitment, and what a lesson for your kids too. To were they aware of the promise and all of this?
Well, I don't know if they were aware of the promise, but they were aware of what I was trying to teach them.
Yeah.
About accountability, about doing things the right way.
Yeah.
And it's hard for people to do things the right way.
It is.
Because it may sound easy, but I think we live in a world where, if I do something for you, Steve, what are you going to do for me?
That's right.
It's the barter system.
Yeah, it is.
And I remember I was down here with Rich Wingo years ago, and we went to church, and that minister got up and he started teaching from the book of, talking from the book of Luke, and he said, he who has much, much is expected. And the church was packed, and he kept saying it over and over again. And all of a sudden, I actually stood up and looked behind me because I thought he was talking to me, but I didn't know why he was talking to me. And then I figured Rich Wingo put him up to it. And then I talked to Rich after church. He says, what? That's your message. You got to tell people
Speaking to your heart, wasn't he?
Yeah. And it's amazing if we take time to listen, what we will actually hear.
Well, you're to be commended for honoring that and for what you did, and it's a lesson for all of us. How vivid are those memories of that? It is for most of us. I can't imagine you were the man in the middle of it, of that goal line stand and those glory days at Alabama. You mentioned that championship in '78. I mean, to this day, do you have a real vivid memory of that particular play, the goal line stand?
Well, I can remember it like it was yesterday, but it's a little foggy in everybody's mind.
I understand that.
I think as soon as we got the defensive call from Ken Donahue, the defense coordinator,
right.
And we were so well prepared for that game on down and distance, on what side of the field, what play they were going to run. And as soon as they called that defense, we kind of knew that Coach Donahue knew that this was the play. And it was a perfect execution. David Hanna came right. He got in the backfield. You had Mike Clemens coming around the side. You had Barry Krause coming over the top. Murray Lake came in. Rich came in. It was the perfect storm. Everybody did their job. Now, Steve, if they had decided to do a bootleg, then everybody would have been wrong. They would have walked into the end zone.
Wow, what a difference it could have made.
It could have.
I want to put you on the spot a little bit here. You've probably been asked this before, I don't know. In terms of greatest Alabama football plays of all time, where would your goal line stand?
Well, you know what? I think there's so many. With 16 national championships, it's got to rank up there pretty high.
It sure does.
I think that it would be just like unfair to compare Coach Saban to Coach Bryant.
Right.
You can't always say, well, you know what, he's won this many titles, Coach Bryant won this many titles.
Yeah.
It's a whole different era, and it's a different way of coaching now. Coach Bryant would probably, I don't know if he would still be successful coaching the athletes the way that the athletes are today.
Different time.
And I don't know if Coach Saban could have coached back then. But they're both, perfect for the University of Alabama, perfect for the tradition, and perfect for the players that want to pay the price. Because to win a national championship, you just don't show up. Mm-hmm. It's the preparation, it's the discipline, it's the dedication. It's knowing that in the fourth quarter, when you can't give any more, you've got to give something. Mm-hmm. And it's a matter of when you come on this campus, there's a tradition of that red jerseys and what it means, not just for the players wearing it today, but for the players that wore it yesterday. And for the players that are going to come in the future, what will it mean to them? And once you understand that, then you can look back and you go, wow, I can understand why Coach Bryant put us through a 2.5-hour practice and then started it over again.
Yeah. And then hit reset and start again.
Or, Steve, we win a game on Saturday and he comes in the locker room and he says, you guys totally embarrassed the red jerseys. We're going to play this game over tomorrow on Sunday. And I remember that happening. And I looked at Bob Bumhauer and I go, didn't we just win? And you know what, Coach Bryant, it wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that it wasn't good enough. It was a message that stood behind that. And, you look back on all that, here it is some 38 years later, and you realize that that's all a part of who you are today. Whether you're working in in business,
Sure.
Wall Street, that's all the upbringing that Coach Bryant put in you.
You're listening to the voice of Bama All-American, the great Marty Lyons, who's spending some time with us this morning. He'll be honored at the game tomorrow with the Paul W. Bryant Award. Quite the honor. And there's more to come from Marty in just a minute. Hang on. Steve Shannon in the morning on 95.3 The Bear.